Hello English students. So if you're watching this video, you probably just read The Crucible, and this video is designed to help you understand John Proctor's decision and idealism versus utilitarianism, two different philosophies that help you understand why he decided what he decided, and some philosophies that informed some other kinds of moral dilemmas that you could get into, which we'll also get into in class, or we already have gotten into in class. So John Proctor, at the end of Act 4 of The Crucible, has two choices. His first one is that he can continue to tell the truth, and what that would mean, of course, is that I'm not a witch, I'm not a witch, and the result of that, the consequence, would be that he is hanged for witchcraft. Because in Salem, if you continue to keep telling the truth, which is I'm not a witch, I'm not a witch, no one believes you, and you end up being hanged for witchcraft. Now the benefit of that is that he would keep his good name, and that his family would know that he wasn't a witch, and he kept his honesty and his integrity right until the very end. He has a second option. He can lie and say he's a witch. Now, why would he do that? Well, because if he does, his life will be spared. He'll be able to go home eventually with his wife and kids. His wife and kids will benefit from him being alive. Salem will benefit from having him be part of the community. And most importantly, he'll be alive. But the problem is, he'll always be known as a witch. And of course, for a Puritan in Salem, that was a fate worse than death. Okay, so these two philosophies, idealism and utilitarianism, that we've talked about in class, can help you understand John Proctor's dilemma. So we have two different kinds of ways of looking at things. One is idealism. What idealism means is that you stick to one particular ideal or principle that you have in your mind. Okay, so you stick to one ideal or principle, such as you should never steal, no matter what. That means that even if you have a really, really awesome reason for stealing, it doesn't matter. If you're idealistic, you're not going to steal because it's wrong. And that's the only thing that you know. The other philosophy, which is a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, or a lot actually, I should say, is utilitarianism. And what that means is that instead of sticking to one particular ideal, you sort of go with whatever makes the most amount of good in any given situation. Okay? So if you're a utilitarian, you act in the best interest of the most people in a situation. So it's the most good you can get. Okay? And these are two different philosophies that can help you understand John Proctor's decision. Because when he first rips up the warrant, if you remember, not the warrant, I'm sorry, the confession. Okay, the first thing Proctor does is he rips up the confession. Okay, let me just get a nice pen here for you. Okay, Proctor rips the confession. And what we said he's acting as then, think about it for a minute, is an idealist. Okay? And the reason he's an idealist is because he's refusing to deviate from that one ideal, which is I should never lie, I'm not a witch, and that's the end of the story. Okay? That's what he ends up doing. Before he rips the confession, what does he do? There's a part where he's almost going to go through with it. Okay? Keeps the confession, or he signs the confession first. Alright, and by signing the confession, he's acting in the best interest of the most people in a situation, the most good possible. Okay? So he's a utilitarian. Okay, so when he first signs the confession, he's acting as a utilitarian because he's doing what's the best interest for the most people possible. Him, his family. Okay? He's violating his ideal in order to get a good, which is basically stay alive. And then he decides to rip the confession because in the end, he's an idealist. And an idealist would say, you know what? My ideal is that you should never lie. Okay? Just like you should never steal, you should never kill, or anything like that. And I'm not going to violate that no matter what, even if it means my own life. And that's what he ends up being, an idealist. Now, we talked about some examples in class, okay? And we said that you have, I put you in that situation where you have to choose the monk or the computer. And everybody was all upset about the dilemma they were in. Okay, so if you choose to save the monk, okay, you function as which one, an idealist or a utilitarian? Think about it for a minute. You're an idealist because even though that monk doesn't serve any kind of social purpose, you refuse to violate the ideal that life is precious. Okay? So life is precious no matter what. And even though the monk doesn't really do anything for anyone, he's a living person, and therefore you need to save him. You're an idealist. Congratulations. Okay? But if you choose to save the computer, okay, you're a utilitarian. Because let's face it, that computer serves a lot more utility than the monk does. Utility means the function of something. Okay, so if something has a lot of utility to it, well then it's good for a lot of things. In baseball they talk about a utility infielder who can play any position. He's good for a lot of different things, not just the first baseman, for instance. Okay, so you are violating the ideal that life is precious because saving that computer is the most good for most people. Congratulations, you're a utilitarian. And you can think about some other examples where this would present itself. Okay, with the subway example, and with the stealing the medicine or not stealing the medicine example. So that's the battle in John Proctor's head. When he first signs the confession, he's acting as a utilitarian. When he rips up the confession, he ultimately decides to be an idealist. The monk in the computer shows this dilemma in the same way. If you save the monk, you're an idealist. Because you say the ideal is life is precious no matter what. If you save the computer, you're a utilitarian. And it's the most good for the most amount of people. Now, if you're interested in this kind of philosophy, there's two people that you might want to check out. The first is a guy named Jeremy Bentham. Jeremy Bentham was a utilitarian. And he more or less developed the theory or the idea of utilitarianism more so than anyone else. Okay? And if you're a fan of Lost, you know that that's John Locke's name. And you can go explore that on your own, how they're connected. Idealism, that's a pretty broad way of looking at things, so there's not really one person. But a guy named Immanuel, he spells his name a little different. I know Immanuel is usually with an A. But his name is Immanuel Kant. And he's one of the leading idealists in philosophy. So you can take a look at those two people if you want to. If you're interested in philosophy, you'll probably have to take it in college. So you might as well take a look at it. And this way you can show up on the first day of college and know a little bit more than your classmates. And you can say, Mr. Mancinelli is so awesome. Okay, I hope that helps. And I'll see you next video.